Love this stupid thing. Part 1, Amy Winehouse. I've tried to record this so many times. We are going to talk about Amy Winehouse, and it is a sad story. And Amy was not well. She was sick. And we're going to talk a lot about using, and we're going to talk a lot about mental health and food. And if that is something that you can't do right now, that's okay. I just want to let you know. And also, there are really horrible paparazzi photos of her, and I'm not going to use those. I'm going to try to use photos that show the kind of person her friends described her to be. And it's not that person. And I think Amy was really sensitive and hopeless romantic, but I think she had to grow up too fast, and she put all of her reality into her dreams. And then when her dreams started coming true, she maybe unlocked those feelings she'd been hiding for a long time, and maybe it was too much for her to take. And we all find ways to cope, and unfortunately, Amy was just not okay. And if that's something that's too heavy for you, I absolutely get it. I don't know. I'm going to bawl this whole series anyway, so you're not going to miss much. Just me crying. So Amy Jade Winehouse was born in Southgate, London, England on September 14th, 1983. Virgo, Capricorn, Gemini. Her dad, Mitch, was a taxi driver and a window salesman. And before that, he was a semi-professional jazz musician. And her mom, Janice, was a pharmacist. I love this picture of her because her nickname in her family was Hurricane Amy. Apparently, she was very energetic and loved trouble. I love this quote from her mom. As a little girl, it seemed as though Amy was mishearing me, because whenever I said don't, she seemed to think I meant do. She was feisty. She always spoke her mind, and she always did what she wanted. And Janice expressed that she had a lot of trouble standing up to Amy, even at this age, because she was a force of nature, hence Hurricane Amy. Amy was so tough that she used to tell her mom, like, "Mom, you really need to be harder on me." This is a direct quote. Janice says that Amy would say, "Mom, you're too soft with me. I could get away with murder." Apparently, jazz was always playing in the house. Her father adored jazz, was always listening to jazz. And they started to realize that Amy would try to mimic Ella Fitzgerald and Frank Sinatra and try to sing the way that they did. You know what I've noticed? You know when you meet people who feel so old, like this isn't their first time on Earth? I always feel like those people have eyes that could eat you up. You know what I mean? Swallow you whole. Part 2, Amy Winehouse. The way that Amy bonded with her father was through jazz. And she realized at a very young age that he was not home a lot. But when he was, when they shared jazz, that common interest, that's really, really when they started to connect. And she really wanted his approval. She very often describes her father being noticeably absent throughout her childhood. And she thought if she had maybe enveloped herself in jazz, that she would become a version or the vision her father would stick around for. And it's very interesting to me when you read about people's lives, you learn about them, the things that plague them throughout their whole life, this idea of being enough. It haunted her for the rest of her life. And I feel the idea of approval was very harmful to her. His opinion of her had a very tight grip on her from a very young age. When she was 12, she gave her dad this birthday card, and it read, "She's 12. I wish I could sing like you, Mitchell." "Daddy, I love you lots, although I don't always show it. Your favorite walking car crash of a daughter." She's 12. She also got the tattoo that says "Daddy's Girl." However, the person that she was closest to was her grandmother, her father's mother, Cynthia, and that's the only person that would ever be able to tell Amy no and stick to it. Many people over and over and over again remark about how important Cynthia was to Amy. They were very, very close and had a very, quote unquote, special bond. And Cynthia was always a major, major figure in Amy's life. It was actually Cynthia that saw that Amy was maybe having a lot of misplaced energy and wanting to be the center of attention. And she's the one who enrolled Amy into theater school, theater class, drama, okay? And actually, well into Amy's fame, they continue to have their traditional Friday night dinners. They had dinner together every Friday night. When Amy was 9, her family found out that Mitch had been having an affair with a coworker. So tacky, so predictable. Why? Why would you choose to be so boring? Her name was Jane. He ended up leaving the family for this person. And listen to this. Mitch admits the affair was out in the open, so much that Amy and her brother called the mistress Daddy's work wife. I don't think that's what you think it meant. I think, okay, Mitch. After this, Amy starts to, how do I say this? Part 3, Amy Winehouse. So after discovering that her father was having an affair at work with a coworker, and not only that, he was leaving the family for this coworker, Amy, of course, as we explored in previous episodes, Amy's approval and wanting to hold her father's attention was very, very dire for her. So I can't even imagine what this meant. So not only is he not hanging out with her, but he's leaving for somebody else who holds his attention more. I cannot imagine a 9-year-old trying to rationalize that. And she started experiencing a lot of emotional pain that she did not know where to place. So she started to be not so nice to herself, and she found other physical ways to release her pain. I hope I am being descriptive enough. I just don't want to get graphic, and I also want to be respectful to community guidelines. This is her quote in the 2007 edition of Q Magazine. "It's a funny thing, a morbid curiosity. I'm talking about when I was 9. What does that feel like? Ow, that fucking hurts. It's probably the worst thing I've ever done." Why am I going like this? I've never done this in my life. All right. She has a song called What Is It About Men? God, she's so fucking talented. And I don't know what it is. I've done so many series, but this little girl's face like kills me. It kills me. Because if there's one thing that really fucks me up is the idea of a kid not knowing how to say how they feel, you know? And that just like really wrecks me. But anyway, what is it about men? There's this lyric where she says, "Understand, once he was a family man," and all that shit my mother went through. And when I was re-listening to her music, a lot of the stuff that she talks about being the most painful, she's usually referencing her father. And I hadn't noticed that before. However, when she was 10 years old, her and her best friend started a rap duo, which is hilarious. Instead of Salt and Pepper, she called it Sweet and Sour. Genius. My cousin and I also started a band, not that you asked, and we called it Angels of Destiny. So dramatic. So later on, of course, her parents divorced. They finally split, and she describes this as the most self-destructive period in her life. And I don't think it's fair to call a kid that young self-destructive. It just sounds like someone who's really mad at someone they don't want to be mad at, to be honest. Part 4, Amy Winehouse. This is undeniably my favorite photo of her. And you know, I'm going to say how beautiful she is all the time, but the more you read about her, she like fucking hated compliments. So it almost feels disrespectful. But she's so cute. Oh my God, Tefi. So Amy's life took a dramatic turn after their parents divorced. She lived with her mom, and quote unquote, devastatingly, her father, of course, was living with his new wife. In a 2003 interview with The Sun, Amy admits that she started drinking at the age of 12. She's not 12 here. She's the smallest little baby 12-year-old, please. Come on. Her parents noticed that her behavior was erratic and she was having outbursts, and her parents tried to put her on antidepressants when she was 13, but she didn't like the way that they made her feel. So rather than, you know, communicating that, she found ways to self-medicate, which many kids do. And I know there are a lot of young kids on TikTok. And if this happens to fall on your For You page and you are feeling not so happy about the way life is going, I promise you that there are so many ways to forget. But that's not the point of healing and coping. Maybe medication. And if your medication isn't working for you, I promise you there are so many other options. But you need to tell your parents, because the point of it is not to feel it, but it's to learn how to maybe work through it. Okay? Feeling numb is just, you're just buying time, because you cannot run from you. Okay? My mom always said that everywhere you go, you will follow. And I just want you to know that. Okay? Okay. So even though Amy Winehouse is experimenting with alcohol, she is awarded a spot at a very, very, very prestigious school. It's called the Sylvia Young Theater School. Nicholas Hoult and Dua Lipa went there. Look at that, huh? I love my Dua. And I think Nicholas did a great job in X-Men and other ventures. So she's admitted into this school and is immediately recognized for her talent when it comes to jazz and her incredible songwriting. In fact, the school described it as prolific. I was not prolific at anything at 13. Maybe being una come mierda, but that's it. In her application, she writes this: all my life, I have been loud to the point of being told to shut up. The only reason I have had to be this loud is because you have to scream. Hold on. You have to be screamed to be heard in my family. My family? Yes, you read that right. This is such a 13-year-old, right? My mom's side is perfectly fine apart from a demon grandmother, but my dad's family are all singing, dancing, all nutty musical extravaganza. I've been told I was gifted with a lovely voice, and I guess my dad's to blame for that. Part 5, Amy Winehouse. Let's continue her letter, right? Because I think it's wonderful. I've been told I was gifted with a lovely voice, and I guess my dad's to blame for that. Although, unlike my dad and his background and ancestors, I want to do something with these talents I've been blessed with. My dad is content to sing loudly in his office and sell windows. My mother, however, is a chemist. She's quiet, reserved, sometimes goes mad, and was the main contributor to my looks. I would say that my school life and school reports are filled with could do betters and doesn't work to her full potential. This is because my present school is a horrible place to go every day, but I guess all schools are. I want to go somewhere where I am stretched right to my limits. 13. Limits and perhaps even beyond, to sing in lessons without being told to shut up. But mostly, I have this dream to be very famous, to work on stage. It's a lifelong ambition. I want people to hear my voice and just maybe forget their troubles for 5 minutes. I want to be remembered for being an actress, a singer, for sellout concerts and sellout West End and Broadway shows, for just being me. Oh God, it kills me. Around 15, she starts smoking weed. We're pivoting. She starts skipping class. She starts getting tattoos. Rock and roll sister. And yes, partaking in an herbal refreshment here and there and everywhere. Trigger warning, ED. At 15, she confronts her parents and says, I have found the perfect diet where she could eat whatever she wanted. And later would go to the bathroom. And I'm going to say one thing. Restriction at one point in my life, I'm not relating to Amy Winehouse. Just being a teenager, finding unhealthy outlets. Restriction ruined my body. But the one with the B, ruined my self-esteem. And there's nothing more that I regret. It's reported that she was expelled from school in 1998 when she was 15. Someone close to her said this: her headmaster didn't take to her desecration of the prissy school uniform, nor a perceived lack of application. The final straw came when the teen turned up in class wearing a nose stud, and she said mischievously, I was expelled. However, Sylvia Young did an interview after Amy passed, and she said this: it's always been reported that we expelled her, but we didn't. I think she genuinely believed that had happened because her mom took her out to go to another school. School was not for Amy, but I do think she was happy here. At 16, Amy starts performing jazz gigs. Can you tell I'm not in music the way I said gigs? Like a loser! Gigs. Part 6, Amy Winehouse. Tefi, go faster. Tefi, go faster. I am doing the best I can. Please. Also, side note, a young lady named Olive helped me with this research, and I just want to say thank you so much. I could have not done this without you. I have been so slammed, and you helped me so much, and I'm just very, very grateful, okay? Love you, Olive. I don't know who you are, and I don't know where you're at, but I do love you. So at 16, she starts doing jazz gigs, shows. I gotta stop trying to be cool. A year later, in a London pub, she meets Nick Shymansky. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's Shymansky. Hit my nose. He's trying to be in the music business, and he says, hey, can I be your manager? In the story of her life, Nick is referenced many, many times as someone who consistently has her back and is a huge person of support of her, a very supportive person to her, and is always looking out for her. A positive figure, if you will. He is one of her most trusted friends early on in her career. So he introduced her to a lot of record companies, got to meet a lot of executives, but in 2002, she signed with Simon Fuller, American Idol creator. And I found this interview of Amy when she was 18. And I really want to show it because it is the cutest thing, but it is so true that she gives off this vibe. She is so much older. I couldn't tell this kid no. Are you crazy? My laptop is filthy and we're not going to say anything because you and I are friends, correct? Okay, perfect. So this is a taxi driver. I realized she thought he was a creep. I know that, thank you. Thank you. I know that, thank you. All right, moving on. Part 6, part 7? Part 7. I found some footage of Amy as a kid. That's crazy to think that she's in Miami International Airport. Tefi, get back to the story. I am. So anyway, she was not media trained. Amy was not media trained. And she really said how she felt in many interviews. And wow, this like terrified the people around her, her team. The media loved it and saw it as like a commitment to authenticity. And they were like, who the fuck is this girl? Who the fuck just tells you how they really feel? In 2003, she releases the album Frank. This was in reference to Frank Sinatra, but in her own words, her own frank demeanor. So this was in 2003 when she's 20 years old, and she starts working with this producer, Salam Remy. And Salam is extremely well known. He's worked with Nas, like prolific people. The Fugees, Fergalicious Deaf, Stacey Ferguson, Estelle, American Boy, hello. Estelle has done other things. I just really love American Boy. Don't get mad at me, but I love the intro to one of his interviews, and I just want you to see the person. I just want you to imagine them together creating music, okay? This is actually a picture of Amy when she was at the theater school. So Frank is critically acclaimed. Critics are obsessed with it. The Guardian compares her to Nina Simone. I don't know if that would fly today, babe, but it's an honor for sure. I love this quote. Ready? After this album, Amy was praised for doing something quote-unquote new. But she continues to mention that she is forever indebted to Black musicians who were doing this far before she was. Continued. Amy says, oh, I got a WhatsApp. Amy says she's just doing something that was palatable coming from a small white woman. Then comes her first relationship. Amy Winehouse, part 8. This is how embarrassing. This is my favorite photo of Amy Winehouse. It's beautiful. She starts seeing a journalist named Chris Taylor, who is 26 and she is 19, and I want to be okay with it. I want to so bad, but alas. And of course, I'm looking this up on blogs because that's like, how people communicated gossip to each other on these like blog gossip boards, whatever. And people are like, yeah, but she's such an old soul, like justifying this like 26-year-old man being with a literal teenager. And she's such an old soul. She is a wounded 19-year-old girl with severe attachment and abandonment issues with her father. Please. So she met Chris because she got a job through her dad's friend at this like online news agency. And this is where she meets Chris, right? This is her mother's quote about Chris. Chris was quiet and shy and a bit of a wallflower, if I'm being honest, and there was a large part of Amy that initially wanted to look after him. It was her way of dominating the relationship, but that also conflicted with her desire for a boyfriend who would protect her and quote-unquote be a man. And in the end, Chris did not match her idea of what a strong man should be, and it frustrated her. Many songs on Frank were actually about him, but most notably, Stronger Than Me, where she calls Chris, I can't say that word. You can look it up. I just can't. I won't. The song is Stronger Than Me. Okay? Okay. And then the pendulum swung to the other side, right? And she starts to say, this motherfucker. Now, not blaming all of somebody's internal issues on a man. Of course not. We're responsible for our own actions, but it certainly didn't fucking help. And I'm putting up this before and after on purpose. And while I know that Blake was also ill, and I feel guilty talking about an ill person, I will say this abusive, manipulative, selfish person met Amy Winehouse in a pub in Camden in 2005. While I feel for him and I don't know his story, I will say that many times in our lives, we fall in love with people who do not love themselves. And sometimes, in order to work, the only things you have in common are the way that you self-destruct together. And there are many, many times in our lives where we look back and we recognize that the people that we are with were mirrors in some ways, in many ways. And while Amy had many addictions, I think Blake was also one of them. Part 9, Amy Winehouse. And I am just leaving up these photos because I love them. But this is not Amy when she met Blake. She met Blake when she was 22 and he was 23. So who is Blake? Like I said, he's 23. He's a high school dropout, which is fine, whatever, who cares? Stay in school. Stay in school. I would have told Blake the same thing. Don't play with me. He was a failed music video production assistant. He was a gambler, big party boy. And in his own words, he loved to shag. What a cool, you must be so cool. They actually met at a pub that he was giving out promotional flyers for, like Miranda with the hot dog man. Which is fine. The night they met, they played music off the jukebox together. They played pool together. They drank a lot together. They went home together. He had a girlfriend. Here's a quote. One of her managers, Nick Godwin, remembers Amy changed overnight after she met Blake. She just sounded completely different. Her personality became more distant, and it seemed to me like she was already down to the drugs. When I met her, she smoked weed, but she thought that people who took Class A drugs were so stupid. She used to laugh at them. And Amy started drinking more, and when asked why, she said, Blake doesn't smoke, so we just drink together instead. And she says, quote unquote, I suppose we trade one poison for another. Blake has even admitted that his relationship with Amy was centered around self-sabotage. And Amy calls her and Blake twin flames all the time, which is not right. Your twin flame is not supposed to hold your hand to your destruction. And I feel so awful criticizing a 23-year-old kid. This kid was just as lost. You know what I mean? But I just wish there was a moment of clarity where you guys aren't dating. You're daring death. You know what I mean? I can't get into the details of things that they did, but you can imagine. They weren't fucking around with herbs, all right? They were doing some 22. I know that 22 is legally an adult, but I'm 32. And I think about being 22. You have so much to learn. You have so much to learn. You have so much to do. You have so much to discover about yourself. But it just feels like they were running away from themselves together. That's what it feels like. You can meet people who are wounded like you, but that can't be your favorite thing about them. She also repeatedly says that he was like being with a drug and that she would die for him. She even has a song called Some Unholy War, and it's about Blake. Part 10, Amy Winehouse. So like I said, she has this song, Some Unholy War. And the song's about Blake, and the lyrics are very insightful as to how she felt for Blake. And it's heart-wrenching. And if you've ever been in a relationship where you feel bonded to that person, but not in the best way, I think you can relate. And her writing is sincerely, she knew she was a genius. And I think sometimes we think our flaws are the only real things about us. But the good things about us weigh just as much as the things that we're not proud of. But unfortunately, if you weigh your humanity on what you don't like about yourself, and somebody only recognizes you as this wounded bird, you think they really see you. They don't. They only see one side of you, and if they can't uplift the good parts of you, then that's not a partner. That's just a lesson. Okay, if my man was fighting some unholy war, I would be behind him, straight up beside him, with strength he didn't know. It's you I'm fighting for. He can't lose with me in tow. I refuse to let him go. At his side and drunk on pride, we wait for the blow. Put it in writing, but who you writing for? Just us on the kitchen floor. Justice done, reciting my stomach standing still, like you reading my will. He still stands in spite of what his scars say, and I'll battle till this bitter finale. Just me, my dignity, and this guitar case. If my man is fighting some unholy war, and I will stand beside you. But who are you dying for? B, I would have died too. I'd have liked to, if my man was fighting some unholy war. If my man was fighting. Whatever it was Blake was facing in his life, she saw that strength in him, and that's why she forgave him, but also saw herself in him, and I see that. Am I making this shit up? All right, moving on. He breaks up with Amy a few months after they meet because he doesn't want to break up with his girlfriend that he has already. Hence the lyric, my ex went back to his girlfriend. I went back to drinking in dark times. Amy admits that she lost control, that this heartbreak she could not live with in her body. She started not being kind to herself again. She started drinking more than ever, and she punched her walls so often and frequently that there was hemoglobin all over her apartment walls. It was also the first lull in her blossoming career since she came out with Frank. Part 12, Amy Winehouse. So like I said, this was like the first time she experienced like a lull in her career after she came out with Frank, and she hadn't started recording a new album. This is from her manager that we referenced earlier, Nick Shemansky, Nicholas, all right? I started to get repeated phone calls from her at 2 or 3 a.m. with her in bits, crying. I found myself driving around to Camden 2 or 3 times a week, knocking on pub doors and seeing if there were lights on, trying to imagine which way she had walked home. After one point, I called her and I was on holiday, and I didn't even recognize her on the phone. It quite quickly became clear to me that this was very serious, and her friends all agreed. Her family brushed it off at first, but eventually they agreed too. It's also during this time that she got so drunk that she fell and hit her head so hard that it scared her neighbor. Her neighbor somehow got in touch with her friends and called them and said, Amy is not well. So her friend that she was in the rap group, she's 10, her childhood friend Juliet, her friend Lauren, and her manager approached her family and said, we need to intervene. And they agreed. They're like, okay, we're on board. So November 2005, Nick drives her to the middle of nowhere to hold an intervention. And he says he gave her an ultimatum, and I'm going to read it to you. He told her, I need to make my point very clear to you. We're not going anywhere until you've acknowledged there is a problem. And until you realize that, I'm not going to be around. And apparently she started laughing hysterically. She thought that he was joking. And I get the idea that Amy Winehouse was someone who, even at the brink of chaos, she still felt like she was in control, like most addicts do. You know, you're exaggerating, I'm in control. And you're looking at them and I'm like, I don't even know you right now, you know? So she realizes this man is not joking. She starts screaming, punching his car, kicking his car. She breaks down, she rolls on the ground. And finally, she admits, okay, I have a problem. And she was out of her depth. And then she says, fine, I'll go to rehab if my dad thinks I should go. And we know the song. Fine, I already talked to your dad. And then Mitch says, Amy, you don't have to go to rehab, you're fine. Part 12, Amy Winehouse. So, like I said, she's like, okay, fine, I'll go to rehab if my dad thinks I should go. And Nick was like, fine, I already worked it out with your family, you silly goose. And she goes up to Mitch and she goes, Dad, do you think I should go to rehab? And he goes, no, I don't, you seem fine, don't go to rehab. And it breaks my heart, but her friends say that that was the first time. But that's the first time Amy died. Out of all the things Amy Winehouse was dependent on, it was affection, attention, and adoration and approval from her father. Because he designed it that way. That's not a mistake. And unfortunately, I guess, if you think about it, she was bred to love people who aren't around. And I can see why an addict would fit that description. Have you ever looked at somebody? I don't know, maybe you're young. You know when your friend is blacked out? It always reminds me of when, like on Shark Week, when they do the up close, like the zoom in to a shark's eyes, and it's just black because they're about to bite. That is kind of what it's like, loving someone who isn't there. So it doesn't matter who's trying to set boundaries with Amy or who's the authority figure. No one comes before Dad, and Dad thinks you're perfect. Dad thinks you're fine. Get out there. Keep making money. That moment could have changed Amy's entire life, and she wasn't a star yet. So this was a really important moment where she could have worked herself out and dealt with her issues with professionals before the world got a piece of her. So Nick and Amy's relationship dissolves. The person that had been there since the beginning, that had her best interest in mind, and most importantly, her back, dissolves because she does not uphold her end of the ultimatum. But when have you ever known somebody that's fallen ill to addiction uphold a promise? If you watch interviews with him, I truly think that this man still doesn't believe that she's gone. And then Amy starts recording Back to Black in this small, tiny town in the middle of nowhere called Miami, Florida, in 2006. She worked with Salam from the last album, Frank, that I showed you the YouTube video of. She worked with the iconic Mark Ronson, Samantha Ronson's brother. Crazy. Charlotte Ronson's brother. If you watch the Lindsay series, you already know. I don't know how true this is, but people say that during this time she was sober because she was being so productive. Busy, you know? Part 13, Amy Winehouse. And before I continue, I just want to say one thing. Never, ever have I ever read interviews of someone who is so fucking real. There's a Rolling Stone article of hers. Let me see when that date is. Maybe you can look it up if you want. She's so real, but brutally, where you want to protect her. And I don't know if sometimes you see this online. Sometimes I'll be on TikTok or like other social medias, and I feel like people are so scared that they're bad people that they tell us everything bad they've ever done. You know what I mean? Because just in case you were to find out for yourself and judge them, it's kind of like when a kid gets in trouble and you're like, what did you do? And they're like, I'm sorry, like confession, like a confession. And all of her interviews around this time feel like she's confessing to so much and she feels like she's fucked. That's what it is. She sounds like she's cornered by herself. It's called My Bizarre Night in the Disturbing World of Amy Winehouse. There's a part where her friend says, you know, Amy really has a heart made of gold, and Amy interrupts her and says, made of wood. It's interesting the way that she saw herself. Because she was beloved. Everybody she's ever worked with talk about how much she devoted her time to making other people feel special. She also started to be very publicly drunk at the Q Awards in 2006. Bono won an award. And as he was thanking people, she screamed at the top of her lungs, shut up, I don't give a fuck about this. Is it nice? No. But is it funny? October 23rd, 2006, Rehab debuts, comes out, and I could never express to you the way this woman skyrocketed to fame. She was so famous so fast that it felt like she had always been famous. Do you hear what I'm saying? And while that's incredible, I want you to imagine being so famous, skyrocketing to fame so fast, while not being able to cope with a tremendous loss and dealing with substance abuse. And I also want you to imagine becoming famous for your vices. I know a lot of creative people that complain and they say, you know, I can only create when I'm sad. Well, she got famous for a song where she was talking about how she was fucked up. Part 4 million. Why can't I count? The Floridian education system. No, it's my fault. It's my fault. But the Floridian education system. So I guess this is part 15, 16. This is another part. I can't. So a lot of people describe this time in Amy's life as a high-speed treadmill that she could not get off of. What do you do when your dreams are coming true, but you're not ready? Like, that's... Listen to this. Rehab was on the charts for 34 consecutive weeks in the UK between October 2006 and June 2007, and was in the top 10 in more than 10 countries. And I feel like we are so numb, or like accustomed to hearing about celebrities and artists that are in pop culture all the time, and we're so used to them breaking records and charting. But this is a newcomer jazz musician. That's insane. This is a person who looked up to Frank Sinatra and Tony Bennett, becoming one of the biggest, most famous people in the world overnight. Another quote. In addition to Rehab, songs like Back to Black, Tears Dry on Their Own, oh my God, Love is a Losing Game, and You Know I'm No Good, classic, are cemented in the British music canon and pave the way for artists like Duffy, Estelle, and Adele. Amy gave us many gifts, like on the song Me and Mr. Jones, she gave us the iconic line, "What kind of fuckery is this?" And I say that shit all the time. Her look bleeds its way into mainstream fashion and trends. So the beehive, the ballet flats, the distressed skinny jean, the cat eye, the retro dresses. Karl Lagerfeld said that Amy Winehouse was his new muse in 2007. If you look at the runway, Chanel runway 2007, all those models have beehive hair. Beehive hair. Beehive hair. Ugh, my words are starting to blend together. French Vogue dedicated an entire fashion story to her. And then early 2007, she's spotted with Blake. When she's 23, in 2007, they elope in Miami. So much was happening in Miami. Where was I? Studying for the SATs? Babe. Okay. Trigger warning. Big trigger warning I'm using right now. Okay? So Blake says in an interview that when they got married in the US and came back to the UK, that is the first time that Amy tried something called rhymes with frack, cocaine, and heroin. Oh my God, I hope this stays up. I mean, it's the truth. So I think, as we all know, it's common knowledge. It is highly addictive stuff, and she got hooked very, very fast. But what sends shivers down my spine is that Amy said her goal in life was to always feel how Blake felt. Shite, I think this is actually part 15, and I labeled the other one wrong. But we keep it moving, we keep it grooving. So Blake and Amy are doing some pretty heavy shit together, and they are within the depths of a bender. And in August of 2007, she has a seizure, a life-threatening seizure. Blake doesn't know who to call, so he calls Nick. And he says, something's happened. Amy doesn't know who I am, and she's overdosed. And Nick says, you have to go to the nearest hospital right now, obviously. And the doctor at the hospital, because Nick goes, pulls Nick aside and says, with the amount of drugs in this woman's system, like you name it, okay? I'm surprised she's not in a coma. Her little body cannot handle this. The doctor then tells Nick that the damage was so incredible that if she has one more seizure, she's not gonna make it. Amy's best friend childhood best friend, goes to Mitch and says, you cannot let her go on tour. You cannot let her go. She's going to die. If you let her go on tour, she's going to die. She goes into Amy's room and steals her passport. During all this time, the friend's begging Mitch, please don't let her go into tour, stealing her passport. Amy's still in the hospital, and the doctors come in, check her vitals, and take her blood, and somehow Amy has drugs in her system again. Her friends go ballistic, and they're like, what kind of oversight is this? How is nobody taking care of her? How is nobody watching her? Listen to this. Her new manager responded to her friends and said, listen, there are a lot of professionals, lawyers, and doctors, all sorts of people that are handling this and that have function on this stuff. Basically enabling and making excuses like, listen, we've got it. Please, you're being so dramatic. Treating her friends like they were annoying. Then Blake goes to rehab and sets up with a counselor, like a sponsor, via Russell Brand. Blake and Amy insisted on going to rehab together, which enablers should not, you already know. I'm going to read you this quote. Amy was assessed by a counselor who concluded that she was very vulnerable, and it was a case of one person having a situation that was beneficial to his using and not wanting Amy to get better for the fear of losing her. Mitch and her manager find a place that they can go to together, right? It's called the Causeway Retreat, and it's on an island off Essex. 3 days later, Amy and Blake are photographed leaving a hotel. Part 16, Amy Winehouse. 3 days later, they are seen leaving a hotel. And those pictures, I do not think you should look them up, for real. I'm not saying that to bait anybody. I do not think you should look them up. They're heartbreaking. They have marks all over their arms, cuts. They're all banged up, bruises. She looks like she does not. She looks lost. She looks frail. She looks scared. She looks bewildered. She looks confused. She looks so weak. She has mascara running down her face. She is so malnourished. She looks a shell. And the media ate it up. And something happens. I see it happening all the time with people who become famous really quickly, because people, I think especially during this time when we weren't as close to celebrity culture, the moment people can't relate to you anymore, they kind of turn on you. You know what I mean? They feel like they're a forgotten part of the narrative, and how they help this person become who they are, the support. Just as fast as she became famous, the media turned on her. The same reasons that they loved her at first, her authenticity, she didn't hide, she was very much herself, and they were using it against her. Trigger warning. There's a story during this time too that Blake was so frustrated that he cut his arm, sliced his arm open, and Amy picked it up and sliced her arm too, and she says, I'll do whatever you do. Blake then gets really drunk and fights this like pub manager and beats him up and then tries to pay him off so he won't say anything. He gets arrested for assault and obstruction of evidence. So when he gets sentenced, Amy quits the rest of her tour for the rest of the year, and she says that she's obliterated, devastated. There's actually concert footage around this time where she runs off stage and you can see her, trigger warning, purge off stage. In November 2007, there's that famous video of her showing up to a concert. She's blacked out. There's no one home, and the audience boos her. That clip was everywhere. That was everywhere. When the booing wouldn't stop, she screamed out to the crowd, just wait until my husband gets out of incarceration, and she walks out. Critic Andy Coleman said it was one of the saddest nights of his life. I saw a supremely talented artist reduced to tears, stumbling and unforgivably swearing at the audience. Part 17, Amy Winehouse. After that show, Amy Winehouse releases a statement via her record label. I can't give it my all on stage without my Blake. The codependency. I'm so sorry, but I don't want to do the shows half-heartedly. I love singing. My husband is everything to me, and without him, it's just not the same. My mom and I were watching the 2008 Grammys, and even though Amy had stumbled a bit, everybody in the world wanted her to win. Everybody in the world, and she was performing. She was clean, and she was up for 6 Grammys. Lucien Grange, who is the dad of Sophia Richie's fiance, made a deal with, he's a CEO of Universal, and he made a deal with Amy. He made her sign a contract saying, if you're going to go to the Grammys and record another album, you've got to be clean. So he wrote up the contract, she signed it, and in order to perform at the Grammys, she had to take a urine test. So if you haven't seen the performance, I really think you should. She was performing via satellite, so she wasn't at the Grammys. She was in a studio in the UK. And when they were going to announce Album of the Year, it is so special because her icons, her idols, presented the award. It was Tony Bennett and Natalie Cole, who's Nat King Cole's daughter. I'm going to show you the video of when she realizes that she won. And what kills me is that she looks like a little girl. Part 18, Amy Winehouse. I'm going to keep showing this video because I fucking love this video, but I want you to know her childhood best friend, the one that I'm always referencing, that's her. That's her. I'm going to turn off the ring light for you because I'm a doll. Okay, ready? Mom and I watched those Grammys. We were bawling. Not even British, but I will say for a couple months, anytime we won something or like something was going well, my mom would text me from my Blake incarcerated. Like, not fun. It was funny at the time. So I don't know if you saw that when Amy won, her best friend Juliet ran up to her and reportedly she told Amy, I'm so proud of you. And Amy replied, this is so boring without drugs. 3 days later, Amy relapsed. After she relapsed, all hell broke loose, especially within the media, and the UK media is relentless and bloodthirsty, and at that point she didn't give a fuck to hide it, so she was constantly drunk in the media. The media leaked a video of her smoking out of a glass pipe, you can imagine. She was in and out of rehab centers lasting only a few days. She was getting into public fights, leaving those fights, torn clothing and scratched up arms, scratched up face. Between smoking that pipe and cigarettes nonstop, she developed emphysema. Blake is in jail during this time, and Amy goes to St. Lucia. This is her bodyguard, and these photos are leaked by the media. Blake sees these photos, and in January of 2009, Blake files for divorce. You can imagine how she treats herself and her body after that news, and because of her legal troubles, she cannot get a visa to the United States, and the likelihood of getting into a studio and recording another album becomes less and less likely. And she has a 12-city tour in Europe, and she's getting $1 million a concert, but they are horrible concerts, a disaster. I'll read you this. The first show of that tour, a gig in Belgrade, Serbia on June 18th, was nothing short of a disaster. Before an audience of 20,000 people, a visibly inebriated Winehouse fumbles her lyrics, misses cues, and occasionally stopped singing entirely while her backing vocals carried on. When the crowd began booing, she threw her shoes at them. When that video leaks, her team says, all right, tour's canceled. So out of a 12-city tour, she did 1, and they canceled 11. Her spokesperson released a statement. Everyone involved wishes to do everything they can to help her return to her best, and she will be given as long as it takes for this to happen. Part 19, Amy Winehouse. So after the June 20th concert footage went viral, like I said, they pulled the rest of the concert dates. On the week of July 20th, 2011, her friends said that they were talking to Amy and she had a lot of clarity and she couldn't stop apologizing for all the things that she had done to them in the past and how she had fucked them over or not behaved so nicely. Her friends said that she sounded like her old self and she sounded like she was getting better, even though she could not stop apologizing for everything that she had put them through. She called Nick that week. He was getting married on July 24th and she rang him up her best friend, and I think guardian angel for many years of her life. And she kept talking about how excited she was to see him at the wedding and see him get married. On July 22nd, she called friends. July 22nd, 2011, I turned 21. She called up her friends and she said, man, I'm watching these videos of me and I can really fucking sing. She stayed up the whole night listening to records and watching TV. And her bodyguard the next day, around 3 p.m. saw that she hadn't woken up yet, which was normal for her because she stayed up all night listening to music. And at 3 p.m. he went in and she was unresponsive and he saw that she had no pulse. Amy Jade Winehouse was found already passed and at peace in her home in the Camden section of London on July 23rd, 2011. And there will never be anybody like her. That voice is one of one. And no matter her public mistakes and her public stumbles, she is still beloved. She's beloved. And after she passed, her family set up the Amy Winehouse Foundation. The Amy Winehouse Foundation works to prevent and educate young people on the misuse of drugs and alcohol. But most of all, when you hear Amy's story, I hope you hear a story about how dangerous it is to not live for yourself. And if you find yourself pushing your limits or participating in behaviors that scare the people around you, I want you to know you don't have to be a superstar, Grammy award-winning musician for people to miss you. Because the people who miss Amy the most are the people that knew her before we ever did. And we would miss you so much. And I'm happy you're here. Amy Winehouse passed away July 23rd. And Nick's wedding, her old manager and protector, he was supposed to get married July 24th. And I think Amy really, really would have liked to be there if she had just chosen herself.